Welcome to Surviving Bad. My name is Peter Komendowski, and together we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. Today we have two very special guests, Megan and her mother, Patricia. Megan, living near Lincoln, Nebraska, struggled with her fiancé's drug addiction, trying to hold together a life with an infant child. And a horrible tragedy shook her life. A few hundred miles away, her mother, Tricia, a police officer in Marshalltown, Iowa, went through all of the anxiety and fears that her mother would feel. Let's meet Megan and find out what happened. Hi, Megan.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, you have a story to tell. I know you're trying to help other people by sharing it.
Yes.
Tell us what happened.
Well, it was 2013. I met a man named Terry Bacon. We instantly became best friends. He had just gone through some really bad stuff, was in ICU, actually up in Lincoln, and had almost died. They called his mom down. It was really, really awful. They didn't think he was going to wake up, and magically he did. And a few days later, I met him.
Now, what did he almost die of?
They don't really know is kind of the scary part. There's been speculation that it was from drug use. He started bleeding internally and externally. You're supposed to have, I want to say like 150,000 blood platelets in your body at any given time, and he was down to less than 10,000. So they couldn't stop the bleeding. It was his ears, nose, eyes. It was awful, and inside. So he was in a coma for 6 days, and his mom had to come from Michigan. But lo and behold, he woke up, and nobody could figure it out. So he spent a few more days in the hospital, and he got to come home and was fine. And I do hair, and his cousin is a good friend of mine. And so she's like, "Will you cut his hair?" I said, "Yeah, I guess I can do that for you." And I walked in and was like, well, that's game over. I broke up with the guy I had been dating, and he became my best friend, and we hit it off from there. Come to find out, he was going through some legal trouble based on drug addiction. So we had to deal with that just a few months into our relationship, and I chose to stand beside him knowing what he was facing. He went to jail for 28 days and then had to go to a rehab for 6 months.
This is all stuff you sort of inherited after meeting him.
Yeah, it was really crazy. Like, why would I do that? But when you just love somebody, you love them, and you don't, you try to overlook their flaws, and he really wanted to do better. So it's kind of that hope that you want to have for humanity, and especially somebody that you just care so much about for. So rode that out with him. He got home, and we got engaged in August of, I have to think about that one, 15. And got pregnant in January, so it was really quick, and we had our daughter cashed in September of 2015. I don't remember that one, that's awful. And then, unfortunately, Terry passed away in April of 2016 from a self-inflicted gunshot wound in our home.
So, what was your involvement with his drug use and stuff once he got out of jail? I mean, what was it like living with that?
It was awful. A lot of ignorance is bliss moments of that something's not right, but you want to believe them when they say that it is. I'm not as ignorant as I chose to play then. My parents are both involved in law enforcement. I knew what I was dealing with, but didn't want to admit that I wasn't strong enough to fight that for him. When it started becoming more apparent and he was using, he had to leave the house. I have, at that point, Kinsey, my oldest daughter, and that's not something I wanted her to grow up around. But he would do better once he realized the consequences are pretty severe, and you can't be here, and that means you lose your home, you lose your family, you lose all of these things. He would do better, and then he would come home, and unfortunately, it's a very, very vicious cycle that it has more power than anything you care about, and it would win, and he would win again, and it was a pretty vicious cycle. So we broke up for the last time in February of 2016. I just told him I can't keep living this life. We now, at this point, have 2 children in the house. And so he had to leave. He came home the end of March, and we started looking back into rehabs for him. And it was the best month we had in a long time. And unfortunately, I think he ultimately was tired.
What happened on that final day?
Typical stuff for us. We woke up late, like always, because I'm not a morning person. And I went and started coffee, and I told him, like, you have to get up and go to work. It's Friday. We got to go. And he just didn't want to. So naturally, being a nagging fiance, I'm like, get up and go to work. We have mouths to feed. You're going to go because I have to go. And he just didn't want to. And so naturally, we bicker a little bit back and forth. And then all of a sudden, he wanted help, but then he changed his mind. And there was really no warning, I don't feel. It didn't even click to me what the possible outcome was until literally 20 seconds before it happened. Just reassured. I looked at him and knew his eyes were really dull. And that's when I was like, he's tired, he's done. So just reassured him how much we loved him, hoping that was going to do something. And he said it back. And at that point, I had turned around to pick up our daughter, knowing that the minute I turned around, it was going to be done.
Was he standing there? What was he like?
Very cold. When you look at somebody's eyes and you can just see that life fire burning in them and they want to continue to go on, it was gone. It was like somebody just extinguished his fire completely.
And how did he end it?
With a gun. What do you mean by end it?
He shot himself
He
right
did.
in front of you guys.
No, that's the common misconception. He allowed me to turn around. I was not forced to witness it, which I'm very lucky, not only for that, but because it's actually very common for people in that moment to take what they believe is theirs with them. Everybody thinks that suicide is very selfish, and the way that I choose to look at Terry's is it was a very selfless act in that moment. He allowed me to continue to raise our children and to spread his story, to fight for other people, and he didn't make me watch him. A lot of people have been forced. They don't have a warning. So it was very quick. I turned around and he said, "Baby, I'm sorry," boom, and that was it.
Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you.
When we return, we'll ask her mother, Tricia, to join us and share the experience from her point of view as well. You don't want to miss this.
Many teenagers don't understand the dangers and effects of marijuana use. Now it's time for Just the Facts, ma'am. An IQ is a score determined from standardized tests to determine intelligence. An IQ of 100 puts the average person in the 50th percentile of intelligence. Regular marijuana use during teenage years can cause a long-term 8-point drop in IQ. A loss of 8 IQ points drops them to the 29th percentile. For more information, go to drugfreeiowa.org.
After Kylie used coke, she stopped caring about school, friends, or who she had to steal from to get more of it. The story of addiction is all too familiar, but you can change it.
Sleeping in, Dad?
If you or someone you know is in recovery from addiction, share your story with the partnership at drugfree.org, because your story can change someone else's.
Hi, I'm Carnell. If you're like me, you spend a lot of time online, streaming shows, downloading files, and Skyping with family. That's why Mediacom recently boosted many of our internet speeds at no extra cost. We call it always faster internet because we're always improving to meet your needs. And when you combine improved speeds with hassle-free Wi-Fi, you get super fast speeds all over the house. So more gets done even faster. The power to make a good thing even better, the power to simplify.
A mother and a daughter have a special bond. In this case, Megan's mom, Tricia, a Marshalltown police officer, knows all too well the dangers of drugs and addiction. Yet she was almost helpless as a tragedy unfolded in her family. Let's take a look at what she went through. Well, welcome back. Welcome to the show, Trish.
Thank you, Peter.
It had to be tough, being in a business where you experience these tragedies, to have it hit so close to home, and yet she was so far away.
Absolutely. I have been in law enforcement for 21 years, so very familiar with the cycles of addiction, violence, violence projected to other people as well as onto oneself. And I was familiar with some of the struggles that Megan and Terry were experiencing. She would share bits and pieces, always cautious to not share too much, knowing what parents in law enforcement might think. Unfortunately, Terry and I had several very candid conversations about his drug addiction and his history, and he really expressed a sincere desire for change. He saw and wanted better things for their life, but the power of addiction was just really, really strong for him. And I would support my daughter through her struggles with him. And really, in my mind, in my world of law enforcement, had a very black and white view, I guess, of drug addiction. Drug users and drug addicts had a certain place, and not in my personal life. So there was a struggle trying to find that balance.
This is an interesting thing because both of you have a great relationship, and you've come together. You've always been tight.
Very much.
But now what we're going to try and figure out is how to sort of unwind the situation and maybe figure out, wow, did you see some signs early on that maybe somebody watching this would have recognized that something had to be done different than what happened so the outcome might change? As a mom, did you have some bells and whistles that went off in your head, and then later on you thought, boy, if I had done this? Or?
Absolutely. And that's the unfortunate part. We've talked about this quite a bit, that regret is one of those bitter pills because it always comes a fraction too late to change things. So looking back, and really truthfully, in the moment, we did recognize signs that things were questionable. And so there comes that tough love moment. So I'd had some conversations with Megan and made a decision to not go out to visit their family in April of 2016 because I felt that Terry was struggling enough with the addiction that I did not want to be around that. And so that is me categorizing him into that law enforcement place of drug users and drug addicts. And I was not prepared for the true emotional impact that had on me personally and on our family.
The event or not going that time?
Well, both, because I think not going that time, if that would have worked the way I planned it to work, it would have been successful and would have nudged him in the direction of rehabilitation. Unfortunately, on April 29th, when my phone rang in the morning, I just heard my daughter's voice on the other end of the phone, and she was extremely distraught. And hearing those sounds come from your child, and you are absolutely, as you stated, helpless. I couldn't reach her. I couldn't just get in the car and drive and be there. And I couldn't quite understand, frankly, what she was telling me. All I kept hearing was, he did it, he did it. And I thought, he relapsed. He assaulted her. A lot of things went through my mind, but not, he shot himself. And when those words came out of her mouth, little did I know the total impact that would have on our family. And still does to this day.
And Megan, we obviously this was somebody you really loved, and he wasn't, quote unquote, a bad person.
Right.
But the addiction was the problem. But were there signs of violence or guns or things that sort of might have given you a warning that something like this could happen?
Unfortunately, yes, we did struggle with some domestic violence issues, but like every other victim that goes through that, male or female, they're going to get better. I can change them. I can fix this, knowing good and well you're not going to win. People can change, and my mom is very good at holding out hope for everybody, which is something she passed along. It's very common to categorize those people as a junkie, an abuser. It's very hard to take a step back and realize that junkie is somebody's child. That is somebody's father, brother, sister, mother, aunt, uncle, so on and so forth. And when you're in that moment, you don't look at him or them like that. You pull back, but hindsight's always 20/20.
Well, when we come back after the break, we'll chat a little bit more about that. And when we see you, we'll talk more about how hope not only found its way back into Megan's life, but how it's turning a helping hand to others face to face with addiction and the trauma of suicide. Stay with us. You don't want to miss this after the break.
You may have heard about synthetic drugs in the news and the fact that more Iowa teenagers who use them are ending up in the hospital. Synthetic drugs can be dangerous, but you can help prevent the threat. Learn about synthetic drugs and talk with your kids now. For sale does not mean safe to use.
Get help at drugfreeiowa.org.
Thousands of businesses have switched to Mediacom Business for fast and reliable internet, unlimited nationwide calling, and popular TV channels with sports package upgrades. And now, with our new business mobile data, they stay connected on the go. Mediacom Business is the simple and easy way for businesses to get all their telecommunication services from one provider, all for just $99.95 a month. Get a free mobile hotspot device with all 4 services. Mediacom Business. How can we help you?
So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice. And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
We couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. We're joined by Megan and her mother, Tricia. Megan's determined to help others facing the challenge of family members struggling with addiction in the hope they do not have to face the tragedy that unfolded in her life. Let's find out more about what she's doing and what she's learned from her experience. Megan, we're back. I know this is tough, and I always am careful when I ask the question, did you ever see something, if you look back, that you do differently? What have you thought about since then?
Looking back, I've learned to not judge people without knowing their story. With Terry, there was no judgment passed by me. I've dealt with the repercussions of judgment from other people. How could you love him knowing? How could you stand beside him as he failed? So looking back now, that's the biggest thing that I've made it a point to not do. I don't look at somebody and assume they're just a junkie, they're just a druggie. They're not. Nobody wakes up one day and says, you know, I think I'm gonna light up this crack pipe and I'm gonna watch my life flush down the drain and wake up homeless, no family, no money, no food. They don't do that. There's always a struggle that pursued before that, which is why now I'm really adamant on helping other people in my position. The worst part of Terry passing, besides the immediate, I have to raise a kid without her dad, was there's nobody that understands. And that is such an inaccurate statement. There are so many people that have been exactly where I stood. On average, there's 96 people in the United States a day that attempt or complete suicide. And out of those 96, for each individual, there's 6 people intimately affected. One of the statistics I read is in America, the youngest child was 6 years old that hung herself in her bedroom after an argument with her mom. I just really want to reach out to people and let them know that you're not by yourself. You don't have to follow in their path. You can change up and be that voice. Unfortunately, the silence is the biggest problem. It's embarrassing to some people to admit that the person you loved the most or somebody that you cared about at all chose to pass away. So I've gone now and started a support group in the town that Terry and I live in for people that have been where I am. It's pretty intense. It's really, really cool, though, to actually have somebody just come up and be like, I'm so glad I'm not by myself, which is a huge eye-opener for me to realize that you're not alone. And it's very, very cool.
And you're very brave.
Thank you.
Now, if you were, everybody always second-guesses themselves. Have you ever thought of what you might have done differently that might have changed the outcome?
I don't believe that there was anything I could do. It took a long time to be able to say everything happens for a reason. I will never be able to wake up one day and understand why Terry chose to die the way that he did. I can accept it, and I can say, I've heard your struggles. I watched your fight. I don't blame you for being tired. He fought a lot in 23 years. The people at 90 probably haven't fought that hard. So it's just very... I don't feel like I could have done anything different. I feel like I gave him that love that he had never had. He wanted a family of his own. He had a kid. And that, honestly, if it wasn't for my 2 children and my family and the amazing support group that I have that some people aren't fortunate enough to have, I would not be where I am today. But I get to wake up every day and look at our daughter and have the very, very best parts of him in her. So I don't believe that I could have changed. I think that sometimes people just really, they're tired, and it's okay to be tired. It's no different. I mean, there's definitely always a better outcome. I'm not encouraging people to be tired and I just, not want to wake up the next day. Those are the people that I want to encourage to go get the help. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, life sucks at times, and it's very, very hard, and you're going to struggle, but that struggle is so worth it when you make it through and can look back and say, You know, everybody said I couldn't do this, and look at where I am today.
Now, in dealing with other survivors, do they often feel alone and isolated, have sort of inheriting the problems that they had so much compassion for?
That's been a very common feeling amongst people is, well, now I have their burden to carry. You can look at it that way, and it's very easy to look at it that way because that pain has now been taken from one person and amplified and spread amongst 100 people. Maybe not as intimately as I myself was, or even my family or his family, but feeling alone is the worst. And I feel in that moment of desperation and hopelessness, it's very easy to comprehend what they were feeling at that time. When they realize that they're not, though, you can see that hope start back up. And that's the biggest thing that I want to put out there is there is always hope. The minute you give up hope, you're losing that self battle, and that's an awful battle to lose. It's different than losing against your peers.
And you sort of need that hope to raise your kids.
You do, very much so. And my kids, the thing I'm the most proud about with them and what pushed me to do that group was looking at them and saying, my kids are going to learn from both of these situations. Terry passing away and me fighting, and which one do I want them to learn the most from? And I want them to see that we can fight and we will be okay, and we can give people that hope to let them know that they also can succeed.
Well, I thank you.
Thank you.
For sharing that. And when we come back from the break, would you be willing to share some advice to people that might be feeling some of these stresses as a mother and a daughter?
Absolutely.
Excellent. After a short break, we'll invite Megan and Tricia to share ideas and advice they feel can help people better understand substance abuse in the home, addiction, and some of the crises you may face. It may save the life of someone you love. See you after the break. Children see magic in the world around them, and parents see the dangers.
There is hope for the future if we face it together.
Find out more about how you can protect your children from the risks of illegal drugs, prescription medications, and alcohol.
Go to drugfreeiowa.org.
I'm Quinn. At Mediacom, we believe customer service should be as simple as possible. So simple, in fact, you don't even have to dial a phone. All you need is our mobile care app, and you can request a call from a customer service agent, manage appointments, check for neighborhood outages, look up account info, and even reset equipment. And the best part, the mobile care app is absolutely free. The power to connect, right at your fingertips. The power to simplify.
You wouldn't walk through the halls of your school naked, yet without thinking. Many teens sext explicit photos of themselves to friends using cell phones, never thinking it'll go further. But once you hit send, you're exposed. You're out there in cyberspace for everyone to see. Sexting, it's dumb, it's dangerous, and it's against the law.
Watching your sister go through withdrawal is the last thing you expect to do. You hope she gets past it, but worry she'll relapse. The story of addiction is all too familiar, but you can change it.
That's 2 out of 3.
If you or someone you know is in recovery from addiction, share your story with the partnership at drugfree.org, because your story can change someone else.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad, and one of my favorite parts of the show where we ask our guests, Megan and Tricia, to share some ideas and advice with us. Some of the lessons they've learned from this experience. Pay close attention. It could make a difference in your life and the life of someone you love. Well, welcome back, and thank you for sharing that story. Mom?
Yes?
You know, we all look at things and see how could we have, you know, we want to protect our children. What could we have done differently? What are some of the things you've thought about that you could share with our viewers in case they sort of encounter a similar situation?
What I really want to share with folks is locally you have some great resources. What I found is really reach out to your local police departments, because we know where all the substance abuse treatment facilities are. We know where domestic violence information and advocates and resources are. We know where there's some suicide prevention resources available. And we want to help, but this is a subject that in law enforcement we don't speak about very much, at least not openly about. What I definitely learned is that the badge and the gun and the vest cannot protect you from life, and this is part of life. When we lost Terry that day, we lost the drug addict, we lost the guy who struggled, but we lost a really funny man. We lost a really good friend. We had a mother that lost a son, so more of him died than just the drug addict. So what I would want to tell people is reach out if you're feeling hopeless. 1-800-273-8255, the National Suicide Hotline. Reach out, call your local police department. Don't be alone, get somebody to you.
And with your work that you're doing in Nebraska now, obviously people are going to hear about it in other places.
Yes.
What are some of the signs you see that you tell people they just have to watch out for?
Any time that they tell you, I don't want to wake up anymore. I'm tired of fighting. It's not a joke. It is never a joke. If you can verbalize that and you can see that somebody is really having a hard time, reach out for help, because you can't fight this by yourself. Unfortunately, we're not Superman, and we're not trained. Unless you have that certification, you don't know what you can do and what's out there to help. The Out of the Darkness Foundation is a nationwide program. You can get on their website. They have really awesome phone numbers to help. They do a lot of walks and raise money for the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, which is a really, really awesome thing. Go attend a walk to get that out there. Be that voice for somebody that either has lost their battle or is struggling and needs to know that there is support with the people that they care about, because nobody should have to be embarrassed that you are sick. There is a mental health issue there. And
so this is very real. When people say things like they can't take it anymore, you need to look at that as importantly as anything you might ever hear.
Absolutely. It is not always just for attention, and people need to realize that. Unfortunately, if you're saying that for attention, because there are instances, don't get me wrong, but make it known that you're going to do something. And if somebody says that to you, be that person to be like, you really should go get that checked out, and help them. Take them and go, or let somebody know.
Thank you very much for sharing. Thank you for being here. And thank you for joining us today. Keep your eye on Mediacom for our next episode, where we explore Iowa stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. Only on Mediacom MC22, your local programming leader.